Lowndes' eyes opened wide on a blurred joining of walls. He coughed and started talking. "Accident? Am I hurt bad?" The voice behind him. "No, Mr. Lowndes, you'll be just fine." "My back hurts. My skin. Did I get burned? I hope to God I'm not burned." "Burned? Burned? No. You just rest here. I'll be with you in a little while." "Let me lie down. Listen, I want you to call my office. My God, I'm in a striker frame. My back's broken. Tell me the truth." Footsteps going away. "What am I doing here?" A question shrill at the end. The answer came from far behind him. "Atoning, Mr. Lowndes." Lowndes heard footsteps mounting stairs. He heard a shower running. His head was clearer now. He remembered leaving the office and driving, but he couldn't remember after that. The side of his head throbbed, and the smell of chloroform made him gag. Held rigidly erect, he was afraid he would vomit and drown. He opened his mouth wide and breathed deep. He could hear his heart. Lowndes hoped he was asleep. He tried to raise his arm from the armrest, increasing the pull deliberately until the pain in his palm and arm was enough to wake him from any dream. He was not asleep. His mind gathered speed. By straining, he could turn his eyes enough to see his arm for seconds at a time. He saw how he was fastened. This was no device to protect broken backs. This was no hospital. Someone had him. Lowndes thought he heard footsteps on the floor above, but they might have been his heartbeats. He tried to think, strained to think. "Keep cool and think," he whispered. "Cool and think." The stairs creaked as Dollarhide came down. Lowndes felt the weight of him in every step, a presence behind him now. Lowndes spoke several words before he could adjust the volume of his voice. "I haven't seen your face. I couldn't identify you. I don't know what you look like. The Tatler, I work for the National Tatler, would pay a reward, a big reward for me, $500,000, $1 million maybe, $1 million. Silence behind him. Then a squeak of couch springs. He was sitting down then. "What do you think, Mr. Lowndes?" "Put the pain and fear away and think. Now, for all time, to have some time, to have years. He hasn't decided to kill me. He hasn't let me see his face." "What do you think, Mr. Lowndes?" "I don't know what's happened to me." "Do you know who I am, Mr. Lowndes?" "No, I don't want to know. Believe me." "According to you, I'm a vicious, perverted, sexual failure. An animal, you said, probably turned loose from an asylum by a do-good judge." Ordinarily, Dollarhide would have avoided the sibilant S in sexual. In the presence of this audience, very far from laughter, he was freed. "You know now, don't you?" "Don't lie. Think fast." "Yes." "Why do you write lies, Mr. Lowndes? Why do you say I'm crazy? Answer now." When a person does things that most people can't understand, they call him crazy. They called, like, the Wright brothers, all through history. History. Do you understand what I'm doing, Mr. Lowndes? Understand. There it was. A chance. Swing hard. No, but I think I've got an opportunity to understand, and then all my readers could understand, too. Do you feel privileged? It's a privilege, but I have to tell you, man to man, that I'm scared. It's hard to concentrate when you're scared. If you have a great idea, you wouldn't have to scare me for me to really be impressed. Man to man, man to man. You use that expression to imply frankness, Mr. Lowndes. I appreciate that. But you see, I am not a man. I began as one. But by the grace of God and my own will, I have become other and more than a man. You say you're frightened. Do you believe that God is in attendance here, Mr. Lowndes? I don't know. Are you praying to him now? Sometimes I pray. I have to tell you, I just pray mostly when I'm scared. And does God help you? I don't know. I don't think about it after. I ought to. You ought to. Mm-hmm. There are so many things you ought to understand. In a little while, I'll help you understand. Will you excuse me now? Certainly. Footsteps out of the room. The slide and rattle of a kitchen drawer. Lowndes had covered many murders committed in kitchens where things are handy. Police reporting can change forever your view of kitchens. Water running now. Lowndes thought it must be night. Crawford and Graham were expecting him. Certainly he had been missed by now. A great hollow sadness pulsed briefly with his fear. Breathing behind him, a flash of white caught by his rolling eye. A hand, powerful and pale. It held a cup of tea with honey. Lowndes sipped it through a straw. "I'll do a big story," he said between sips. "Anything you want to say. Describe you any way you want. Or no description, no description." Shh. A single finger tapped the top of his head. The lights brightened. The chair began to turn. "No, I don't want to see you." "Oh, but you must, Mr. Lowndes. You're a reporter. You're here to report. When I turn you around, open your eyes and look at me. If you won't open them yourself, I'll staple your eyelids to your forehead." A wet-mouthed noise, a snapping click, and the chair spun. Lowndes faced the room, his eyes tight shut. A finger tapped insistently on his chest, a touch on his eyelids. He looked. To Lowndes, seated, he seemed very tall, standing in his kimono. A stocking mask was rolled up to his nose. He turned his back to Lowndes and dropped the robe. The great back muscles flexed above the brilliant tattoo of the tail that ran down his lower back and wrapped around the leg. The dragon turned his head slowly, looked over his shoulder at Lowndes, and smiled, all jags and stains. "Oh, my dear God, Jesus," Lowndes said. Lowndes, now in the center of the room where he can see the screen. Dollarhide, behind him, has put on his robe and put in the teeth that will allow him to speak. "Do you want to know what I am?" Lowndes tried to nod. The chair jerked his scalp. "More than anything, I was afraid to ask." "Look." The first slide was Blake's painting. The great man-dragon, wings flared and tail lashing, poised above the woman clothed with the sun. "Do you see now?" "I see." Rapidly, Dollarhide ran through his other slides. Click. Mrs. Jacoby alive. "Do you see?" "Yes." Click. Mrs. Leeds alive. "Do you see?" "Yes." Click. Dollarhide, the dragon rampant, muscles flexed and tail tattoo above the Jacoby's bed. "Do you see?" "Yes." Click. Mrs. Jacoby waiting. "Do you see?" "Yes." Click. Mrs. Jacoby after. "Do you see?" "Yes." Click. The dragon rampant. "Do you see?" "Yes." Click. Mrs. Leeds waiting, her husband slack beside her. "Do you see?" "Yes." Click. Mrs. Leeds after, harlequined with blood. "Do you see?" "Yes." Click. Freddie Lowndes, a copy of a Tatler photograph. "Do you see?" "Oh, God!" "Do you see?" "Oh, my God!" The words drawn out as a child speaks, crying. "Do you see?" "Please, no." "No what?" "Not me." "No what? You're a man, Mr. Lowndes. Are you a man? Yes. Do you imply that I'm some kind of queer? God, no! Are you a queer, Mr. Lowndes? No! Are you going to write more lies about me, Mr. Lowndes? Oh, no, no! Why did you write lies, Mr. Lowndes? The police told me. It was what they said. You quote Will Graham. Graham told me the lies. Graham! Will you tell the truth now? About me, my work, my becoming, my art, Mr. Lowndes. Is this art? Art! The fear in Lowndes' face freed Dollarhide to speak, and he could fly on sibilants and fricatives. Plosives were his great webbed wings. You said that I, who see more than you, am insane. I, who pushed the world so much further than you, am insane. I have dared more than you. I have pressed my unique seal so much deeper in the earth, where it will last longer than your dust. Your life to mine is a slug track on stone. A thin silver mucus track in and out of the letters on my monument. The words Dollarhide had written in his journal swarmed in him now. I am the dragon, and you call me insane? My movements are followed and recorded as avidly as those of a mighty guest star. Do you know about the guest star in 1054? Of course not. Your readers follow you like a child follows a slug track with his finger, and in the same tired loops of reason. Back to your shallow skull and potato face, as a slug follows his own slime back home. Before me, you are a slug in the sun. You are privy to a great becoming, and you recognize nothing. You are an ant in the afterbirth. It is in your nature to do one thing correctly. Before me, you rightly tremble. Fear is not what you owe me, Lowndes. You and the other Pismires. You owe me awe. Dollarhide stood with his head down, his thumb and forefinger against the bridge of his nose. Then he left the room. He didn't take off the mask, Lowndes thought. He didn't take off the mask. If he comes back with it off, I'm dead. God, I'm wet all over. He rolled his eyes toward the doorway and waited through the sounds from the back of the house. When Dollarhide returned, he still wore the mask. He carried a lunchbox and 2 thermoses. For your trip back home. He held up a thermos. Ice. We'll need that. Before we go, we'll tape a little while. He clipped a microphone to the Afghan near Lowndes' face. Repeat after me. They taped for half an hour. Finally, That's all, Mr. Lowndes. You did very well. You'll let me go now? I will. There's one way, though, that I can help you better understand and remember. Dollarhide turned away. I want to understand. I want you to know I appreciate you turning me loose. I'm really going to be fair from now on. You know that. Dollarhide could not answer. He had changed his teeth. The tape recorder was running again. He smiled at Lowndes, a brown-stained smile. He placed his hand on Lowndes' heart, and leaning to him intimately, as though to kiss him, he bit Lowndes' lips off and spit them on the floor.